When it comes to investing, retirement, taxes, healthcare, and estate planning, the decisions you make today can greatly affect the quality of life for you and your loved ones tomorrow. What you need is straight and unbiased information on the most important issues you'll face when planning for your retirement and financial future. Good news! You found Premier Retirement Radio with Jeff Fogan. Jeff is the founder of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management, and he's been guiding people financially and into retirement for 30 years. So get ready for an hour of the most comprehensive financial information on the radio. Premier Retirement with Jeff Fogan. And now here's Jeff Fogan and Jeff Shea.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Premier Retirement with Jeff Fogan, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. I'm Jeff Shea. I'm just here to ask the questions. But of course, the words of wisdom and solid advice, you know where they come from. It's the other Jeff Fogan, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management. Hey, Jeff, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you? It's good to have this inauguration behind us and a new president intact, and looking forward to a bright future.
Exactly. I feel the same way as you, Jeff. It is a new day. It is a new beginning. Well, let's break it down here a little bit and talk about what the president planned to do here in his first day and the first week. And we'll break this down on the show today in several different segments. We're going to be talking about immigration, energy, climate, trade, also the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE we call it, DEI, among other things. So what is your general takeaway if you watch that inaugural address? Trump has said that this is a new golden age of America. What do you think about that?
I mean, obviously, he's a good marketer and a good businessman, and he's pitching his position, and I think he's doing a good job of it. He's also looking like a leader that's standing firm in his positions and standing firm on his convictions. I think that's great. I think that'll give a lot of confidence to Americans, whether it be business ventures, whether it be planning for taxes, retirement, investing. Although I still have a lot to say about, whether we're in certain cycles that, we can't really avoid completely. I think we're set up on a foundation where just the consumer confidence and the confidence of America in general, I think took a leap forward. I think there were still some people on pins and needles whether we were going to even get to the inauguration, what kind of a shenanigan or trick could have been played to keep him from taking his position and having a peaceful transition of power, even though it was, I'm very uncomfortable, I'm sure, for the Democrats sitting there hearing the inauguration speech when he talked about how broken and corrupt and everything the current system was, and now it's a new day. A day of liberation from the old and a start to a whole new situation. I think it's great. I'm looking forward to it. I feel better than I have in a long time. I don't think just because he says those things, it's going to automatically happen. I still think there's some rough times ahead. There's a big pile of doo-doo we have to dig ourselves out from under. And I don't know if Trump has enough shovels or shovelers or a big enough shovel to get out of it quickly. It might just take kind of like how you eat an elephant, just one bite at a time. We might have to do it one shovelful at a time to dig ourselves out of the mess. But I do think that we're going to dig out, and I'm a lot more optimistic, especially about the market now than I was. However, I'm still not crazy enough to go all in just because Trump's the president. I think there's a lot of people doing that right now. But, even with the president since the election, we've seen a lot of selling going on with institutions, and I don't think they're just Democrat-run institutions that oppose his philosophies. There's a lot of people that are economists and, smart money that knows that we still need to be cautious going forward as things shake out. So, along with that optimism, you always have to have that, what we say, cautious optimism maybe, or at least responsible optimism, especially when it deals with your money and your livelihood and your future. I don't think we should, let down our guard by any means, but certainly I think it's going to be a little bit more fun coming to work every day this year than it was last year.
Well, I do believe that there is a renewed energy. There's a renewed optimism here amongst the general populace in the country. I do want to really talk about some of the main things that Donald Trump says that he's going to do, and he really did issue dozens of executive orders on areas ranging from immigration to trade to maps, and some of which could face legal challenges. But let's talk about immigration. Acting on a campaign promise to end illegal immigration and conduct mass deportations, Trump declared a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border. Can you comment a little bit on what's going to be happening here with this border and what's already happened?
Well, it seems to me, I've heard that a lot of people are self-deporting. They don't want to get rounded up and put in the cattle car, so to speak, and taken back home. I think a lot of them know that they don't have any reason to be here. They are illegal and probably going to make the best of their situation by going back and maybe even trying to come back the right way. I think it's good that we enforce some sort of laws. I love the idea that America is such a great place that people from everywhere want to come here, hopefully for the right reasons, to live the American dream, not to, create cells so they can pull off terrorist activities or basically join the opposition and try to ruin America. Honestly, I don't understand what the agenda is of the other side, because everything seems so counter-American or counterproductive or I don't know, it just seems counter to all those things that I feel are good and productive and wholesome, although they talk a good game. Taking care of the poor, they can't take care of themselves. I don't think there's anybody in the Republican Party that doesn't believe in helping those that can't help themselves. In fact, if you look at the Republican people in Congress, they give like 4 times as much to charities out of their own pockets than the other side does, that tends to believe, charities, it's socialism, charity, it's all charity, helping those that can't help themselves. All the while they, make deals to enrich themselves and use their position of power to, benefit themselves. And I think we've seen that. If you look close, you don't have to look that close to see, that's pretty much what Biden's done over 50 years now for his family. If not, why would he have pardoned all his family for crimes that they're not even convicted of unless he knows that they committed crimes? Liz Cheney, unless he knows they committed crimes. Hunter, we know he committed crimes. All these people that are getting pardoned is basically a call out and say, hey, yeah, we're corrupt. Well, we're going to protect ourselves because, we have the power to do so. So, they kind of called themselves out, left a legacy of kind of in my opinion, a black mark on what could have been a positive legacy, and, focused on some of the good things, tarnished it on the way out in a pretty big way, especially with just all the pardons and just all the extra money spending, trying to pay back and give kickbacks to all the people and their cronies, between the election and now. I think it approaches $1 trillion of just, budget money that didn't have to be spent, that could have been redirected to paying down debt or paying good causes that make sense. But everything was done to try to make Trump's life more difficult because, for some reason it's all about getting even with him. But boy, Trump, you better not get even with us. Don't lose your political power to chase down or prosecute your political oppositions. But boy, they did it pretty strong for 8 years or more. So, I don't know. I think it's a cat calling the kettle black, and I think it's pretty hypocritical. I'm just glad it's over for now. Unfortunately, there's going to be another election in 4 years, and I hope Americans who seem to have a short-term memory remember this well enough. And, just see what's happening in that whole left wing of government. I mean, look at California, and the lack of leadership there, and just the BS that keeps on going. I mean, smart people, even people that have supported that party, are using their brain power to look past the politics and say, this isn't good. We've got to focus on these positive changes. So again, I mean, we're only a few days into it. So, I don't know what the future looks like, but the market so far hasn't done anything negative. It looks like it's pretty happy about the situation for now, as we see all these executive orders unfold and realize what areas of business, especially energy, is going to be supported as far as energy efficiency is going to be a big part of the recovery, because if we can bring energy costs down, then everything goes down. We can certainly start controlling inflation. Companies can start putting more earnings to their bottom lines to justify these outrageous prices that we're paying for stocks nowadays. I think the time will come where, even though there's some companies that are actually holding their own as far as price to earnings valuations and things like that, there's so many that are out of whack in hopes that, somehow these earnings will come back to, justify the prices. I think we might actually see some of that happen. And if there is a correction, which, we're due for, historically, we're in cycles that end in recession and end in a market correction. We had it start in 2022. They kind of manipulated their way out of it by printing money and basically BSing us and handing money banks, not having them take ownership of their own inability to even manage their own financial situation. And there are banks in Wall Street, but they can't do it. So the government, the Fed, bails them out, and, they trade for profits and manipulate the market. And, they've done it in a way that where pretty soon we just get complacent and think, oh, well, they're just going to, QE to infinity. They're just going to keep finding their way out of it to print money and to support this, game. But eventually those games end badly if we look at history. So we'll still see how it comes out. If there's a correction, I don't think it's going to be as bad as it would have been had the other side won. That's a good thing, but I don't think that we're out of the woods yet. So, I think the future of this year's radio shows, you'll see, how I kind of bob and weave through my thinking and what I'm seeing in the market. That's what I do. I just use this for a therapy session to get out what's on my chest. So thanks for asking, Jeff. What next?
Well, Trump once again said he wants to remove the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement as part of a series of actions promoting fossil fuel use in this country. And I think being part of the Paris Climate Accord there cost the U.S. about $3 billion, something like that, in lost GDP. But let's talk about fossil fuels in the United States and making America energy independent. Previous to this, President Biden shut down these pipelines and made America energy dependent on other people. What sort of an effect do you think that drilling in this country and being energy independent will have on Americans?
Well, I mean, price of gas obviously will go down. It'll also create a lot more infrastructure. I think the companies that are going to benefit the most are not necessarily the oil companies. So some people think, oh, great, we're going to be energy independent. We can still produce oil. Well, it still might cost a lot to produce that oil, but if we can do it here, we can find ways to at least not have to pay, OPEC surcharges and all the, distribution charges that go along with importing our oil from other countries. It also creates a situation where, as Trump said a few days ago in his speeches, he mentioned, America has more oil than any country on the planet. We're the most energy rich country. We should be a net exporter. We should fill up our reserves. We should be an exporter. We can drive the price of oil down. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean big profits for American oil companies because they're getting their oil from all around the world. That doesn't mean Exxon and Chevron and all those companies are going to actually make more money. They might make a little bit less on a gallon. They'll probably just do a little bit more volume. So again, remember when they started cutting the oil and the gas prices started going up, they were talking about record profits from Exxon and all those other companies. Well, that's because, all that stuff that they drilled in prior years and was in their storage was all distributed at a profit because the going rate was higher. So there was more profits. Now, as the costs go down, we might see earnings go down on those oil companies in a big way. But what we might see instead are all the distribution companies, some of these transfer companies that distribute pipelines for oil and gas will go up. The infrastructure, the companies that build all the facilities for refineries, tanks, pipelines, and so forth. Those infrastructure companies are going to get a lot of business. I think some of the domestic companies, a lot of the infrastructure bill that, we haven't dug down to all the details, but, we're quitting the climate accord. And if I'm not mistaken, I remember that being trillions of dollars, and something in my head says It was like a $7 trillion debacle that was going to cost us over the next, not that many years, but, even 100 trillions, I think, over, decades, just stupid amount of money. And it was basically just cronyism trying to pay countries and, cronies, and people to start fake businesses to be government contractors. I think it was just a big sham. And, the more money they can take from taxpayers and give it to, all the powerful elite, the closer they are to having a ruling class and a bunch of peasants that are just worker bees for the rest of our lives, trying to pay the system and let them tell us, what's good for us and what's bad for us and dictate our lives for the rest of our lives. And I think we at least push that scenario off, maybe for decades with just this next 4 years. I think we were heading quickly towards a situation like that, just based on how easy it was for government to take our money and spend it any way they wanted to, and make up lies about climate change that I don't believe are true. Now, climate changes all the time. Some people say, well, look at the oceans have risen 3 inches in the last 50 years, and well, maybe they measured it in high tide instead of low tide. I saw a picture of Dubai where they said Dubai's sinking city, and there's pictures of the shoreline being exactly like it is now 50 years ago. So, I think it depends on when you measure it, what year. You can always cherry pick good times in the stock market. You can also cherry pick good times and bad times that'll support any type of a climate agenda. And I think that's been done for us, especially when the government only gives money to people that will do a survey that supports their, agenda and their narrative that, it's an existential threat and the government needs more money to take more taxpayer money to pay all these people, all of our money to do what? To get rich. And do they really accomplish much? I haven't seen it. And, I'm getting older, and the older I get, they say the wiser you get, but it's more cynical because I'm seeing the stuff that they're actually doing. So, government is less and less, I think, in our favor, on our side, are, public servants. They're self-serving in most cases. I think Donald Trump being a billionaire as he is, and Elon Musk, I think they have their own interests at heart, but I also think that they don't need to do it for the money because they've already been there. So I have no problem with Trump surrounding himself with other billionaires that know how to run a business, that know how to save costs. The Doge, for example, that can reapportion all this climate money to things that matter, maybe even to pay down debt. I mean, that would be a great start, right? The other thing is the infrastructure isn't just about oil and gas. It's about a lot of things. There's roads, all kinds of transportation issues that have gone neglected because, they're trying to pay off all these stupid programs that really don't mean anything. And they don't really even create economics from the standpoint of manufacturing and building and growth and the GDP. It's just money transferring hands for a what if in the future we can do this, that, or the other and somehow save the planet. I think God's in control. I still believe in God, and I still believe he has a hand on the planet, and he knows what we can and can't do. And I don't think he's going to let it blow up until he sees fit to let it blow up. And if that's his plan, he's going to do it regardless of whether or not we screw up or spend trillions of dollars on climate. I think we need to be responsible. I mean, no doubt about it. And I think America's done the best job in the world as far as keeping their energy clean and the pollution down. And, you go to the countries, I mean, you can see the difference. And we are such a clean nation compared to most other countries that I've traveled. And I've traveled a lot of them, not everywhere in the world, but enough places to know that, we got it pretty good here. And we do take care of, and we are good stewards of those things that we've been given here. I wish the rest of the world would do it, but I don't think it's just our job to spread money around that isn't going to be put towards, making the world a better place anyway. And I think if America, and one of the things that I think Trump didn't say in his speeches enough, or didn't, he kind of alluded to it, but bottom line is, if we focus on America and we can get America to be a strong nation again and an example and in a place where we can reach out and help those causes that actually need to be helped, not just, gender transition studies in Ecuador and give them grants for that, or give billions of dollars to, some other country because they might have a natural disaster. Let's just, wait till it happens and see if we're in a position to help. But I think as we strengthen America and get it back to the elite status that it once had, not at the detriment of the world, but we're in a better place to give out a hand and help them up rather than just use all of our resources to try to help them become equal so that we can be less than we could be, so that they can be a little bit better than they are. Well, they can still be better than they are, and not just a little bit better, a lot better, if America is allowed to grow and do the things that America has proven it can do. And I'm proud American. I'm proud of this country. I can't believe some people say it's a horrible country and we've got so many things wrong. Yeah, we do have a lot of things wrong. And it's starting with the government and stupid policies and just the dumb things that they do, with our money and, in the name of public service. And, I think most of the listeners here on this radio station probably are easy to agree with those thoughts. But I'm really optimistic about how things are going. And I don't even remember the question that you asked me, but I think I've answered it and then some, haven't I?
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. I asked one question, you answer about four of them, and that's what I love about doing this show with you. Talking with Jeff Logan of Premier Retirement Planning, Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa, talking about Donald Trump's first day in office, the first week in office. Again, if you'd like to come and sit down with Jeff and maybe share your thoughts about the Trump administration, how it may affect you in your journey towards a confident retirement, we invite you to call us at 520-780-9059. Leave your name, telephone number. You can do it this weekend, and someone in the office, probably Shelley, will call you back during the week and set up an appointment for you to come in and ask your questions. No cost, no obligation for this conversation whatsoever. 520-780-9059, just a casual conversation. As I said, it is not going to cost you a dime, but this one call really could make all the difference. Jeff, Trump declined to issue new tariffs through an executive order on day one. Instead, he instructed his federal agencies to conduct a broad examination of the U.S. trade practices with other countries, and there's a focus on China, Canada, and Mexico. He says that he'll enact maybe a 25% tariff on February 1st. What effect do you think that these tariffs will have on us here in this country?
Well, two things. Immediately, it'll affect us in a way that, prices obviously will go up a little bit. Now, the 25% tariff, like I've said before, in other shows, tariffs don't necessarily mean, horrible things immediately. If you buy widgets from China for $2 and you sell them for $50 and they go up 25%, now that widget's going to be $2.50. And our company's really going to take a big hit if they raise the price 50 cents to the consumer. So the $50 widget goes up to $50.50. Is that going to be life-changing? Maybe not. If it's a car and they're charging $50,000. They build the entire car over in China, they sell it in America for $60,000, but they're going to raise the tariff on it 25%. Now it's a $62,000 car. They're going to have to sell that car for 75 grand. Well, what does that do? Does it make you, oh my gosh, you can't afford a car anymore? No, you buy an American-made car that didn't go up $10,000. So guess what? China's got to make a really good car, or they got to lower the price, or they've got to, if they want to compete, they've got to compete. But guess what that does? It makes all the American car makers be more competitive. Now, are they all going to raise their price to compete? I don't know, maybe a little bit. But I'm sure some of the car dealers would say, great, they just, kept some of the competition. Now we can add some employees and build a new plant. We can build more cars because we can sell cars all day at $60,000, but we can't compete at 50. So now you've got manufacturing growing, you've got employment growing, you got higher paying jobs growing. And again, those things don't, if the tariff enacts in February 1, we might not see the benefit of that to Americans in 1 or 2 years. Hopefully before Trump gets out of office, so that people can say, hey, this policy does work, and let's get a new guy in that still can address those same or adhere to the same values and the same policies to continue to keep America great once it gets back on the right track. So again, tariffs is an interesting thing. I do think that it is inflationary in nature right out of the gate, but Trump has also said he's going to lower taxes right out of the gate. If he can lower taxes, that might, especially to corporations, maybe that helps them become a little bit more competitive while they're, building the new plant and increasing production and hiring the new people to do so. So I think, creating a more level playing field for countries, especially who can, build products at a fraction of the cost that we can here, because they basically have slave labor and don't pay their people at all a livable wage, and they live in the streets and they poop in the alleys, and they, work 20 hours a day and, don't really have a life. And I'm talking about, China and just the inhumane, circumstances that some countries are willing to work in order to somehow dominate, sales in the world. And I think we're going to create a situation where maybe we're less dependent on that and more able to, enrich Americans instead of just send all of our money back to other countries that don't respect us or respect their people, or, I guess do the things that are based on our fundamental values. So, I don't think tariffs are necessarily a bad thing. I think they're also a bargaining chip. I mean, if you say, hey, we won't tariff this or that or the other, but you have to do this, or, hey, quit asking us to supply billions of dollars in aid for this and that and the other program. We'll only raise your tariffs 5 or 10% maybe. I don't know what Trump's got up his sleeve, but I know he's a negotiator. I know he's a businessman, and I know he uses everything with leverage. You always start, when you make a deal, you always start with the worst deal you can probably ever offer, and you hope to see the other side come as far as they can toward that deal. But eventually there's compromise, and eventually there's, somewhere to meet in the middle where everybody is happy. And, I don't think the total deal is done. I think it's just a starting place that he thinks is going to shock people into, the reality that, we've got to raise some money from those people that are taking money out of America because they're importing so much into our country and we are a consumption nation. We are a consumer nation, net consumer of just about everything. I think we net import way more than we export. And, maybe someday we'll be an exporter of more than just our oil and gas situation. We'll be exporting more manufactured goods, which will strengthen America and help us maybe be able to, support those causes in other countries that would help people live a more humane life rather than be treated badly just so they can be competitive on the manufacturing level. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of good that can come out of tariffs. I think it's a far more reasonable tax than just saying, let's just pour it on the rich and let's just take more people who work hard. Let's just take more of their money and just spread it around. I think the people that benefit by doing business in this country, especially when they're out of the country and that money that we spent for those products is now gone into their country, maybe we ought to get a little bonus for that. So I'm not against tariffs at all. I'm not necessarily for a 25% hike because I could see some damage done from the standpoint of inflation, especially right out of the gate.
Well, Donald Trump pledged a golden age for the country in his inauguration address this past week. He says the golden age of America begins right now. We'll be the envy of every nation. We will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. We're talking about Trump's inauguration speech, the first week of his presidency, with Jeff Hogan here of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management in Tucson and Mesa. Once again, our telephone number, if you'd like to get in and sit down and talk with Jeff, 520-780-9059. Make that call this weekend. Leave your name, telephone number. Shelley will call you back during the week and set up that conversation. Once again, 520-780-9059. You can also find out more about us online at premret.com, premret.com. Jeff, time for a break. When we come back, we'll answer listener questions and then continue to talk about the Trump Presidency 2.0 when our show continues right here on 790 KNST, Tucson's most stimulating talk.
You can't start a trip you've never taken without a plan, and you can't start your retirement journey without a comprehensive plan to get there safely. To request your no-cost Premier Retirement Roadmap, call 580-780-9059 or request it online at premret.com. Now back to more Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan and Jeff Shea.
Thank you so much for joining us here for Premier Retirement on 790 KNST. We're here for you each week for your fiscal fitness, your financial education. As a matter of fact, we're on the radio 4 times a week. Saturdays at 7 a.m., also 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. You can also find us on Sundays at 11 a.m. If those times are not convenient for you, we're also a podcast. Go to wherever you get your podcast, search for Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan. Again, you'll find this show and many of our past shows so you can stay on top of your journey towards a confident retirement. Okay, Jeff, listener question time. Our first question this week comes from Russell, listening to us in Oro Valley. Russell says, I've been hearing all the news about Trump being pro-business and making America energy efficient. With that in mind, if he can do these things, where do you think are the better places to invest in 2025 and for the next 4 years?
Well, I think just based on, AI, just energy independence, all the things that he said, based on some of the things that are already in play, I think as I mentioned earlier, I think there's a lot of energy plays. It doesn't mean just by gas companies. One of the bigger plays I didn't mention earlier is probably in the nuclear area. There's a lot of companies that are building, a lot of these alternative energy companies that actually, got started and really started making a big push, with the idea that we're going to clean energy and we, are going to ban gas in a few years and no gasoline cars. So, we've been looking at a lot of alternatives. Some of these big companies are doing very well. I mean, even though I hate these big, huge windmills, I mean, some of them are actually generating a little bit of energy. I mean, there's companies that are involved in all kinds of different types of energy. I think the natural gas and oil, like the pipeline transports, infrastructure, is probably going to be better than the gas companies themselves, because if prices of gas go down, there might be a slightly lower margin on those things. Maybe the earnings aren't quite as high, especially if gas prices are going to go low. They're just going to do a little bit more volume, probably export some things. Maybe maybe earnings will go up, but I think initially they won't, because they're already into the stuff they have already drilled and produced, probably at a higher rate. They've got to do it more efficiently now. So in other words, if gas is $3.50 and it basically costs $2.50 to drill, then they're probably drilling in areas that they're going to have to stop drilling in order to go get the cheaper gas and make those moves. So it's going to take some time, probably, to translate into profits, I'm thinking. But some of the transfer companies, transportation companies, pipeline companies, people that build those things are going to do well. But I think nuclear is a big one. Anything that are building these small little nuclear power plants, and there's companies that are going up all over the place. And I've got a few names, but I'm not going to give recommendations on the air. But our growth portfolio out of 22 stocks probably has 4 or 5 of them that are focused in that area. So nuclear energy is certainly one to look at in the energy business, aside from just drill baby drill oil. A lot of that is because there has to be a lot of energy with all this AI, chips, Bitcoin, and all the things that generate so much, it needs so much computer energy to generate the things that they generate, or to power the chips that they power, need a lot of energy. So, where do you get that? Well, it could be a diesel generator, but it also could be, nuclear power, which is a lot more efficient, costs a little bit more to get going. But a lot of companies are investing big bucks, and they're actually, already having good earnings, on their investments. So that's an area to look at. One of the other areas that, I think are, just infrastructure in general. I mean, we might see big construction companies that have been a little bit stagnant lately, other than, some of them that have government contracts for some of the infrastructure bill money. But I think there'll probably be a lot more benefit by the push that President Trump has said he's going to give to just, revitalizing the infrastructure of America to help transportation do better. So again, maybe even railways will make a comeback, and some of the other things that have kind of been flat for several years are going to be more useful and good investments going forward. I don't have a crystal ball. Never said I did. I'm better at protecting money and not taking undue risks. But if you want to speculate a little bit, I don't think it's a big speculation or too far out of the realm of reasonable to just know that various sectors of the energy market are going to do well.
So energy, AI, infrastructure, what do you think about healthcare moving forward here in the future?
Well, as the baby boomers get older, healthcare is always going to be a big deal. I think companies, I don't know. The Medicare program is, pays only so much. The private insurance tries to fill gaps. The only way they can stay in business is to deny claims. It makes people upset. There's always going to be that whole deal to wrestle with. But I will tell you this, that insurance companies, health insurance companies aren't going to put themselves in a place where they lose. They're just raise the rates to cover their risk. And that's what insurance companies do. We transfer our risk to them. But as people get older and more people, and more old people means probably more healthcare issues are going on. I think, healthcare is obviously one of those things that, you could have been investing for the last 20 years and you know that you're doing pretty good. And it's fairly recession proof. That doesn't mean a stock can't plummet. If we have a recession and people want to take profits on those insurance company stocks, but from the insurance companies, maybe hospital, we need new facilities. So those companies that are building medical buildings, hospitals, medical complexes, things like that, may see some continued growth. I assume that they will see some continued growth. I don't think it's going to be rocket to the moon like some of the AI companies that'll probably come around soon. But I do think it's a pretty solid place to diversify into.
Russell, thank you so much for listening to us in Oro Valley. Of course, we'll send you out Jeff's book, Retirement, The Road Ahead. We also invite you to give us a call here, 520-780-9059. Sit down with Jeff and ask your individual questions. Okay, next question. Brenda, listening to us in Tucson. Brenda writes, I'm 84, retired and in good health. Several of my ancestors have lived to be 100 or more, and I might do that too. I'm having trouble living off my meager pension and Social Security. I have about $600,000 in investments, and I'm trying to avoid taking too much out of them. I hope to leave something to my kids in my will, and there's always that rainy day. I'm worried about running out of money, and I'm not much of a risk taker. The majority of my money is in bond funds that pay me about $15,000 a year. One of my friends suggested that I buy an annuity, but my late husband always told me to avoid investments from insurance companies. What's your opinion?
Well, we use all the different financial vehicles that are available to us, and insurance companies are on the planet for a reason. They wouldn't exist if they just ripped off people or were a horrible investment, would they? Insurance companies transfer risk. So from the standpoint of just, like life insurance and health insurance, everybody's used those anyway. Investments from the standpoint, some annuities aren't even called investments. In fact, annuities are fixed assets, which are, more in line with like a safe as a CD, principal guaranteed. Annuities have also made a lot of changes in the last 20 years or so that your husband probably didn't realize were available. And of course, Wall Street firms and banks aren't going to tout them because they're competitive products to, what you're used to dealing with. Everybody deals with their bank. Everybody has a broker. They have a 401k. None of those guys do annuities. So to hear about them, you really got to go out on your own and do a little bit of research. Now, as a financial advisor and a fiduciary, I think we should use all the tools that are available to us and make the best of things. Now, you're getting to the age where annuities aren't even going to be available too much anymore, but you can lock in, profits. You have $600,000. I've got, available annuities to me right now that could pay for the rest of your life somewhere in the neighborhood of 5.5% or better guaranteed. If you want to leave all $600,000 to your kids, you're only making $15,000 interest from your bonds now. What if you could make double that, $30,000? That gives you a raise and your money is secured by similar bonds, but the risk of the price and the value of those bonds going up or down is all laid to the insurance company, and they will give your heirs your money when you die. The other thing you could do is convert that into an annuity that has an income rider. And there are some annuities that, have a historical rate of return if you back test them, or if you just look at, what they're making, let's say 5 to 8% returns, but they will guarantee you a 10% payout on your money, guaranteed for the rest of your life. Now, let's just say it makes 8, but you take 10 and you live another 15 years because you've got longevity. That'll put you close to 100, right? So, or let's just say 20 years. So let's just say you take 20 years. Well, maybe there's still $300,000 or $400,000 in that account if it doesn't perform. But here's the cool thing. Let's say it doesn't perform. Let's say the market gets bad. Let's say if some calamities hit the markets, the economy, something horrible happens and, the bond market crashes or just bad things happen. They will guarantee you that money. And you could, like I said, for $600,000, you could probably guarantee $50,000 or $60,000 easy forever on that money. Now, if you only need 30, you could use half of that and then invest the rest for 10 or 15 years to leave to the kids, and maybe even go a little bit more aggressive because it's money that you wouldn't have to use. So you can structure an annuity in so many different ways. Maybe half your money goes to pay for the next 20 years of living expenses at twice what you're using now. And the other is set in an account that is guaranteed to grow at X amount of dollars. That will be worth at least the 600 you started with, when you pass. And, you can look to other opportunities to kind of use different buckets of money, or spend a portion now and let the other grow, rather than just say, oh, well, I'm just going to take whatever the value of those bonds are and hope they don't go down, and hope they go up, and hope I don't spend them all, and hope the interest is enough to help me live. I mean, you're getting pressed a little bit from inflation, and that stands to reason, especially when you've seen your bond. If you've got 600,000 in bonds, then I am pretty sure they were worth 750 or 800,000 2 or 3 years ago, because bonds have dropped in value 20% plus on average. If you look at the aggregate bond ETFs and stuff that are out there, you're still down since early 2022. And they haven't made a rebound because interest rates are still up. Now, if interest rates go down, then your bond values will go up, and you're still making your $15,000 a year. You might give more to your kids. You might be able to cash them in for more, but that's all a what if. With annuities, you get a guarantee that you can count on. You can sleep at night knowing that paycheck's going to be there every month for the rest of your life, and then some. Even if that account dries up, the annuities will pay you money that is not in your account because the insurance company insures them. So, why you would not leave your pension or your annuity or your monthly income to an insurance company who manages pensions on a regular basis and are good at it. They are principal guarantee experts. Bonds aren't principal guaranteed. They're just hold to maturity, and you get your money back and you get interest in the meantime. That's the best they can do, but you have to sell them in the meantime. You're at risk of whatever the market value is. And right now, you would take a loss on most of those bonds, I'm pretty sure. So again, insurance companies take the risk off the table. They give you a little bit more peace of mind. They probably pay more than you're making now. In fact, I would almost say the word guarantee. I haven't seen your portfolio, but if you're only getting 15,000 interest, I know I can do better in about probably 100 different places. So I think you ought to open up your mind. I think your husband, had he known that these things were going to be available, that are available today, when he said that to you, I don't think he would have said those things to you. I think he would have, if he had an open mind, he would have looked and found out that there are some benefits to annuities. That's why they exist, and that's why they're probably the number one income product for retirement, period.
Brenda, thanks for listening to us in Tucson. We appreciate the comments, and we hope you do live to 100. In the meantime, if you'd like to talk to Jeff about your individual situation, give us a call here, Brenda, 520-780-9059. Also, check us out online at primrat.com. Final question this week, Jeff, comes from Wes, listening to us in Swarita. Wes says, I just inherited my father's house, which is worth about $550,000. I'm trying to decide if I should hold on to it and rent it out because of increasing real estate appreciation, or sell it now. I've never been a landlord before, and I don't know if I can do it. I'm worried about taxes if I sell it. Can you help?
Well, taxes if you sell it. Let's see. You just inherited your father's house worth $550. Guess what? You get a step up in basis. So to the government, it's still worth $550. You don't have to pay taxes if you sell it. That's the cool thing. The other thing is if you think being a landlord and collecting rent is not a job, it is. You will have a job, and if you are old enough to retire, if your father was, been retired for 20 or 30 years, you're probably getting to retirement yourself. Do you want that burden placed upon you? There are places you can make some appreciation plus get income very similar to what rent would be. Now, I can't guarantee the prices of houses are going to double or triple or quadruple. And if you're just looking at, having an asset that, keeps you up at night, or you get calls or midnight move outs and you have to, refurbish stuff and fix things and pay taxes and insurance and things like that, whether you have a renter in it or not, if you're not sure you're going to like it, you're probably not going to like it. I've tried it a few times thinking that I would be okay. And honestly, I've hated it personally. I'd rather loan money to a guy who buys a rental and just get the interest on the loan and let him deal with all the problems. But I don't want to be the landlord. It's a pain in the butt. I have better things to do. And if I were retired, I want to be golfing and traveling whenever I wanted, not answering the phone when there's a problem, or trying to find a new renter when one moves out, dies, or just decides to trash the place and you need to kick them out. So I think there's, depending on what you want to do with that money, you won't have to pay taxes. That's the good thing. You could sell it. So I have a lot of clients that are basically landlords until they retire. And you know what? They don't like retirement being a landlord, and they sell their property and cash out. Now, in their cases, they have to pay tax on a depreciated asset that's close to zero generally. They would have to pay probably $100,000, $150,000 in taxes on that sale, whereas you would get to keep the whole amount because your father, kept it until he died and let you inherit it. But, maybe he was more cut out to be a landlord. You probably saw what he had to go through. I'm not sure he gave you all the details or not, but it's a rude awakening when you try it. And you might try it and decide to sell later, or you might just say, hey, you know what, it's worth 550. The market's up. I don't know if the market's going to stay up. If there's a recession, you could have some softening in the real estate market. Not sure. But if interest rates come down and more people start being able to afford to buy houses, maybe prices will go up again. So I don't know if that's a near term or long term. I don't have a crystal ball, but those are your options. No taxes on that sale. There are other options if you want to create income, or if you just want to park it in a long-term investment portfolio and see if you can double or triple it and do it on more of a passive basis than try to deal with renters and the landlord issues.
Good question, Wes. Thanks for listening to us in Sahuarita. Of course, give us a call here, 520-780-9059. Sit down with Jeff, and of course, we'll send you out Jeff's book, Retirement, The Road Ahead. If you've got a question for us you'd like us to answer on the air, you can send it to us by going to the website, primret.com. Use the contact page there. We'll get it that way, or you can call Shelley and dictate it to her, 520-780-9059. Of course, if we use it on the air, you'll get a great answer, and you'll also get Jeff's book, Retirement, The Road Ahead. You're listening to Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan. Again, 520-780-9059. Call that number this weekend. Make your appointment to get in and sit down with Jeff and ask any questions that you have about growing your wealth or your journey towards a confident retirement. It's not going to cost you a dime, and there's absolutely no obligation. Leave your name and telephone number. Shelley will call you back during the week, 520-780-9059. Jeff, let's continue our conversation here about the first week of Donald Trump's presidency. Something that I do want to talk about here is Trump signed an executive order establishing the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, as a task force that aims to identify areas of government waste. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't Elon Musk heading up that organization?
Yeah, he's going to head up that organization. He's going to put a rocket on Mars. He's going to keep building electric cars. I don't know if that guy even sleeps. It was mind-boggling. I guess Vivek Ramaswamy, I don't know if he doesn't see eye to eye with Elon Musk, or just two smart guys in the same room, or too many. He decided, I think, to run for governor of Ohio, so he's going to be out of that picture. But Elon Musk is going to do that on his own. He's a smart guy. I mean, that guy's had to pull off a lot of miracles in the financial world, some of which was, begging the government for a loan, on a couple of things, or basically a contribution to, help start electric vehicles and things like that. But he's pretty good at saving business. He's been down to his, next to his last dollar a couple of times in just about every business that he started. And he's hung in there, and he's found a way to win and make it work. I think if they treated the government like business, they would work it out and, figure out a way to make it work without spending money that they don't have. And that's the thing, is they've learned as business people that they can only spend money they have. And the government has gotten so used to spending money they don't have. In fact, they take it at will from the public and develop new taxes when they want more. And then if that's not enough, they just print it. They just go, oh, well, we just need this much money. Let's just fake some money. We'll give it to a bank. Then we'll borrow it back from them. We'll pay them interest, and we can borrow more from them. It's just like the biggest Ponzi scheme built out of thin air that, you can even imagine. They call it bonds, and they call it treasuries, and they call it things that sound like money, or that might have monetary value, but it's looking more and more like the emperor's new clothes. Speaking of which, and I've used that terminology, emperor's new clothes, with cryptocurrency. And I don't know if you want to go there, but Trump, has this new meme coin, which is basically cryptocurrency that end up generating about $9 billion right out of the gate in value. And my take on that, speaking of which, is, he took a lot of money from crypto. And I'm not going to, try to look for negative things about President Trump, but I think he could have left his hand out of that one, especially when Bitcoin and all these companies that are supporting crypto donated heavily to his campaign. And that's why he kind of changed course on how he felt about crypto. Now he builds one. I'm not sure how much that $9.5 billion is his, or if it's just, market value that just was created out of his idea. But bottom line is, I don't think it looks that good. And that could be, maybe they're developing that coin so they can use the profits to pay down the debt, or to, help solve some of the Doge problems. I don't know. I think that's, Elon Musk has got a lot of work cut out for him, because he's going to be met with resistance at every level, because all the government people that put their cronies into positions of department heads to run this department or that department, creating unelected bureaucrat after unelected bureaucrat to be in charge of stuff we don't need to be in charge of, and paying money. I think there's going to be a lot of flack, because a lot of people are going to think that the people will lose jobs, and they should, if they're unproductive or not doing anything that really benefits Americans who pay those bills. Just because you're a government worker doesn't mean you're entitled to my taxpayer money unless you're doing something for it, in my opinion. So, do something for it. I work hard to earn my living. I think they should work hard to earn their living, and not just say, well, I have a government job, so I get a pension and I get a job and they can't fire me. So, let's see how that goes. If they can not create too much, I guess, loss or create a recession by, massive unemployment. And, they can save all the costs they want, but, you can't really put the government out of business right away. It'll take some time to do what I think they're trying to do, and that is come up with somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 trillion worth of cuts. I think Ramaswamy and Elon Musk both admitted that it's going to be pretty hard to find that many cuts, even if they did lop off every, department that didn't seem that it had a purpose. So I think it'll be a long time in coming before we ever get to that level. I think it's great to have somebody that's smart enough to look at it, though. But I think they need to, take this fiscal responsibility, not just to cut and waste, but, what new things are they going to do? Where are they going to spend money that, gives us the biggest bang for our buck and, creates a good return on the investment? And, I guess bouncing back and forth to this President Trump's coin, I'm not sure if that was a return on anybody's investment. In fact, I think it's inflationary in nature. Crypto in and of itself is not the government and the Fed creating money. It's private citizens essentially creating money out of thin air. That creates a situation where people are willing to buy goods and services out of this money that was created out of thin air. I mean, if you add up all those, maybe it's trillions of dollars. I don't even know how much there is, probably trillions of dollars worth of Bitcoin if it went from, zero to $100,000 a coin, plus all these other fake coins that came out since then, cause inflationary pressures. It is an inflationary act in and of itself. So, while Trump says he wants to get rid of inflation and, cut costs and all that stuff, I think he's maybe part of the problem by supporting crypto and making his own coin and basically giving license to anybody who wants to do so. So anyway, I think that is an area that they ought to try to cut expenses out of. In other words, if they can control how much money is being printed and how much money is actually in circulation, they can create they can have more control over the economy rather than this fake side, what we call it, kind of this gray area economy or this kind of stealth economy behind the scenes that's created with all these fake money that somebody just decides is worth so many dollars, and they actually take your dollars for it. And then you have this thing that is run by a password and they call it money and give it value, and people buy into that story. I still don't understand it, but I think that would be a good area for Doge to look at and see what the effects are in increasing costs across the board, not just to government, but also to private citizens because of essentially the printing of money through cryptocurrencies. I think the cryptocurrencies, if it does exist, ought to replace the dollars on a government basis, replace government issued dollars by digital dollars if they're going to go that way. That way it's the money supply is actually managed, not just haphazardly show up one day and this is what the money supply is. Oh, is it real dollars? Is it crypto? Is it somebody's foreign currency? What is it? I mean, I don't understand how they can ever get inflation under control or have a handle on economics with this going on.
Jeff, just a few more minutes left in the program. Donald Trump said the golden age of America begins right now. We've talked about a lot on the program today. Can you summarize for our audience maybe what this second Trump presidency is going to mean to us?
Well, I think, from his standpoint of calling it the golden age of, in a new age, I think he has a lot of confidence in himself. I think it's a little bit of, patting himself on the back. It's a little bit of trying to pass on some confidence. It's a little hypey, I think, in a way, too, because he didn't acknowledge some of the problems that need to be fixed. He just acknowledged that they were there and now they're no longer there. They're not just no longer there. They have to be fixed. So there's still going to be a process. I think it's not going to be as easy as it sounded in the speeches. And we're going to see how it materializes. But I do believe that it helped, I think Americans in general feel more confident in their future. And if Americans feel confident, there's less fear. There's less chance of a horrible recession that, when everybody's running for the hills, that exacerbates a problem. If everybody's just methodically adjusting to maybe lower price stocks or maybe high interest rates for a while, but know that things are going to get better and have that hope, they'll continue to spend money and kind of wait till things kind of fix themselves without running for hills and blowing the markets up. So I think just the fact that he gave, Americans a lot more confidence is probably going to ease whatever trouble is ahead. But again, I don't think, just because he says it's a golden age, it's going to look golden. It might look a little rosier. I think just the feeling and the sentiments that we have certainly feel pretty golden right now, but it just remains to be seen. But I think this speech was great. I think he did a great job explaining what he was going to do. It's going to be a lot more transparent. The fact that he's been through it 8 years ago, through 4 years ago, and now he gets another chance. He had 4 years off to find out all the things that he could do differently and probably could have done differently and all the things he needed to fix. And he was basically watching with this date in mind. So I think he has great hopes. I hope he accomplishes everything he set out to accomplish. I'm behind him. I'm a supporter. I voted for him, and I hope it works out. And I'm going to support whatever president ends up being president, but I'm glad it's him.
Our show is called Premier Retirement. We're talking with Jeff Hogan here, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa. Once again, if you'd like to get in and sit down with Jeff, talk about your feelings about Trump presidency 2.0, 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. Also, check us out online, if you will, at primrat.com. Jeff, out of time for this week. Thanks so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Most importantly, as I do every week, I want to thank our listeners for joining us here. So for Jeff Hogan, I'm Jeff Shade. Have yourself a great January weekend. We'll talk to you again next week with another edition of Premier Retirement right here on 790 KNST, Tucson's most stimulating talk.
Investment advisory services provided through Premier Wealth Advisors, LLC, an Arizona state-registered investment advisor. Securities transactions are placed through TD Ameritrade. Insurance and annuity products are offered through Premier Advantage, Inc., DBA Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any reference to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying abilities of the insurance carrier. The show is intended for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as advice or recommendations. Due to show format, accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Premier Retirement and its representatives do not provide legal or tax advice and may only conduct business with residents of states and jurisdictions where they're properly registered.